restless nights get later, I wanna know what fears apply to me, and what I'm sure of. You make me leave my island, make me free my home from riots and rags. Picked all the shit up and let it go. Besides, I burned a branch, a limb too long. Spent last season pining, call a week ago. Prime replacement.
Hello everyone and welcome. I wish everyone watching a very happy Losar or Tibetan New Year, wherever you are in the world. And for those of you who may not know, today marks the beginning of the new year in the Tibetan Buddhist calendar. This year is the year of the Iron Ox. It's a wonderful February day weather-wise here in Melbourne, Australia, and this is Matt Dawson, and I'm here with Kim and Yeshe Hegan, who join me online from New Zealand. They are respectively the producer and director of the film Return to Gandhi Road, a film which tells the powerful story of a Tibetan Buddhist master, Kangyur Rinpoche, literally saving the 84,000 teachings of the Buddha, which amounts to over 2 tons in weight, from extinction by transporting them from Tibet all the way to India. The film has won several awards for Best Documentary Film at film festivals around the world, and is being aired at Cinema Nova in Melbourne on Tuesday, the 23rd of February at 6:45 p.m. sharp. I'm very glad and very grateful to have been put in contact with Kim and Yeshe and for the opportunity to chat with them about the making of the film. So thank you to you both for taking the time to talk today. Happy Iron Year to you both, and kia ora.
Yeah, kia ora to you too, Matt. Kia ora.
So perhaps we can start from the beginning. Kim, what was it like to be asked by Dzongtse Khyentse to make this film?
Well, it was in another time. It was 10 years ago, and at that time, I kind of spent the last sort of 25 years kind of away from that the Buddhist life almost entirely. I was touring bands for a job, and just had almost completely separated myself from it. It wasn't until, my daughters, unbeknownst to me, Yeshe was in France, and she ran into Kangyur Rinpoche's son, and that began her trip. So Yeshe had a bit of a job getting me out to meet Dzongtse Khyentse Rinpoche. And when I met him, when he suggested that we make this film, I flat out sort of refused. It was about the last place I wanted to go back to, because I had sort of fairly kind of strenuous memories of India, and of course, the last time I was there, I'd had that epileptic fit, that episode, sickness, which isn't pleasant at all. So it was a kind of a slow. He asked us to do it, and Yeshe, I can't remember, Yeshe, you'll fill in the details, but it was something that gradually. It got to the point where I knew I just had to go and make the movie, but it wasn't my first instinct to say yes.
And yourself, Yeshe?
It was really inspiring, because Dzongtse Khyentse Rinpoche is someone who, whatever he seems to do, it has all these layers of effect that you never expect, but like down to the most minute grain, and on that particular day, when I took Dad out to the beach, it was really simple. Rinpoche just listened to his story, that he had had the accident, that he had left India, and Rinpoche didn't actually tell us to make a film. He just said, "You should go back to India, Kim." And Kim and Dad was just like, "Absolutely not. No way." he flat out refused a number of times. And so Rinpoche was just thinking of getting Dad back to India, and he said it kind of a number of times, and finally Dad said, okay. And then immediately Rinpoche turned to me and said, and you've got to film it. So he was really kind. He didn't kind of set us off on go and make this massive feature film when I'd only made a few short films, you know. He just said, you should go back, you should just take a camera. And so that's how it started. And it wasn't till like several years later that that we both kind of came to terms with the fact that the film has to be about Kangyur Rinpoche, not Dad. You know, that it's a much bigger subject matter. And even then, I mean, even Kangyur Rinpoche's sons were so kind as we were making it. They kind of always said, well, if you ever manage to do this, if anyone ever actually sees it, it'll be good. So there was never really any pressure on us until we crowdfunded. And then we had 800 people's worth of pressure on us, like, oh my God, we better make a good movie. But the way they navigated it, the teachers, was really very kind. It was just Dad and daughter picking up a camera and heading off to India. So that was really kind. And as I was saying, the effect was, I mean, it might be easier for me to say from the outside looking at Kim, but as you're saying, he'd forgotten Kangyur Rinpoche. And through this project, this was Dzongsa Khyentse Rinpoche's, you know, foresight, he was forced to think of Kangyur Rinpoche every single day until I remember, Dad, the day about 3 or 4 years into it, you called me and you said, I remember what he smells like. I remember his fingernails. I remember him now. And that was the effect of being forced to think of Kangyur Rinpoche, talk about him in your work as a producer. That actually has completely, you know, that was one of the reasons I think why Dzongsa Khyentse Rinpoche said, Kim, you know, make it a film, because maybe he knew just going back to India wasn't going to be enough. We needed to flourish. We needed to talk about it. We needed to hustle people. We needed to bring it into samsara.
Yeah.
So that's how I saw it.
It sounds like a very organic process.
Extremely organic, and no pressure until the very end. But then suddenly, when we had the crowdfunding, we had all these incredible professionals to help us, award-winning, you know, cinematographers, editors, and everything. So even then, it was really light going. I think compared to the friends I know who make films and my experience of making films normally, this was really a breeze in one way. But then if anyone who practices Dharma knows what it's like to try and embark on anything to do with Dharma, it was like a car wreck in another way. Yeah. Transforming our minds. Yeah.
There was a little bit of pressure because although at the time I was in the entertainment business, there were I knew a lot of film people, and my wife was a film person and had achieved quite, you know, a lot in New Zealand film. Mm-hmm. So I knew of and approached, you know, about after 3 or 4 years, I think I approached a DOP, Fred Renata, and also some other people who were kind of very well regarded. So once we had done, for Yeshe it was crowdfunding. For me it was, once I'd asked these people and they'd agreed, the pressure was on to make a decent film, because these were professional people who made really good films, award-winning films.
Might you want to say more about that? Yeshe's mentioned it as well, but you started off with just having the handheld camera, you know,
yeah,
going back to India. And then at some point it sounds like there was all these like 800 donors or however many you said, Yeshe, and all of a sudden there's people expecting this film. Might you want to say what does that feel like when you have sort of like something that's organic and then suddenly turns into a bigger project, so to speak? Maybe Yeshe, if you want to start.
Yeah.
Okay. So really fortunately, we did the crowdfunding after we filmed in India. So filming in India again was very much like, hey, if this all goes down the toilet, it's totally fine, you know, which is a good frame of mind to go to India with. But we did, Dad had enlisted one of New Zealand's best cinematographers who came along purely because of his connection with Kangyur Rinpoche. At first it was voluntary. We were able to, you know, pay him at the end, but at first his connection was directly with wanting to see, you know, the subject matter. So he came along, and when we ended up with some amazing footage from him, you know, really beautiful footage from this cameraman, then we realized, okay, we could potentially make a really great film here because of him. So, and because of the events that unfolded, which meant, you know, when people watch the film, they'll see that we felt we'd have a really good story to tell that might be able to help people. So once we had that confidence, then we crowdfunded, and I mean, Kangyur Rinpoche is loved by people around the world. We crowdfunding, it came from more than 15 countries. Volunteers translated the crowdfunding into more than 7 languages. The film was 100% crowdfunded. So everything we have done, all the decisions we've made have been in corresponding to the family's guidance rather than a film commission or a funding body. So that crowdfunding really, it suddenly meant that we could finish it, and we could make a fantastic movie because we could hire really great people, like, as we were saying, Margot Francis, who Kim found, the editor, was another Emmy award-winning editor. So because of those people, we were able to do some kind of justice to the remarkableness of Kangyur Rinpoche's story.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, there was a bit of a plug. There was a time we spent a lot of time getting making an application for the Film Commission, and it was, you know, the first I had a little bit to do with the Film Commission and sort of at the edges. So I had a meeting with and mentioned it. You know, I went to started going to film events, and there was this, and had a brief chat with the head of the Film Commission, and he was really quite enthusiastic. And so we put a lot of time into our application to the Film Commission, and we were basically turned down. So after all that work, you know, so there was the whole movie seemed to go like a wave, you know. Then there was, oh well, how are we going to do this? You know, and there was, I had to raise a bit of money myself to get us to India, and that was when the rubber hit the road for me, you know, because I had not only was starting to feel invested in it, you know, emotionally, but also financially. So that was a bit that, you know, that we just need to bridge it, and we did. But we were so amazed by the amount, the result of the crowdfunding. It was just fabulous, and really, really, and Yeshe did such a great job working on the whole crowdfunding thing. We did it with Indiegogo, and they're great international crowdfunders, and Yeshe did a great job. We did a lot of work on that actual crowdfunding process, and we were.
Oops. Looks like Kim's just dropped out for a second.
Okay, I'm sure he'll come back.
Yeah. Yeah, that Indiegogo, I haven't used Indiegogo before, but seems like a really good platform. I think Felicity Lodro, who I don't think will mind if I've mentioned her, she's been using some crowdfunding for Trailer Rinpoche's documentary. That's been going extremely well from all reports. So yeah, fantastic. It's an amazing to make a film. Like I think Kim's mentioned that he was surprised just how many Buddhists were out there who were, or, you know, people who maybe not even Buddhists, but who were willing to support the funding of the film, and sort of a bit of a shock to him. Was it like that for you as well?
Yeah, it was really surprising. But I also felt like the film got a lot of energy at that point because of everyone's. Suddenly we had hundreds of people around the world, just not only kind of when you donate to something, they all just wanted it to happen so much. You know, they wanted Kangyur Rinpoche's story to be told so much that it just kind of, it gave it all such a strong push as well. I'm sure it would have been a really, really different movie if we had just beat along, even just, got the funding from somewhere. But having kind of 800 people strongly want Kangyur Rinpoche's story to be told, I'm sure had a huge effect on what happened as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry about that, Kim.
Yes, a technical issue there. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's all good. We were just not to cut you off or anything, but we were just mentioning about Indiegogo, the crowdfunding platform, which and also I mentioned to Yeshe that I've heard you say that you were sort of shocked is probably not the right word, but surprised that there were so many Buddhists or people who might not be Buddhists but willing to support the film and wanting to see it come to life and be brought out into the world. Might you want to speak about a little bit?
Absolutely, yeah. I was, from the most unlikely, there are some very unlikely Buddhists out there, and extremely, they knew what it meant. One of the comments from the film commission was, they didn't know who this guy was and would there be, much interest, and they couldn't see the interest, the international interest. Well, we just socked it to them. There was just such a really fanatical interest actually in Kangyur Rinpoche, and by then Yeshe had written a sort of a synopsis and about Kangyur Rinpoche's life, and it was we'd kind of I'd helped her a little bit with it. Well, we'd worked a little bit together, but it was mostly Yeshe's work, and it really was. The more I thought about it, the more the big. He did play such a major part in the the shifting of the Dharma from Tibet to the West. And there are even people, and as you will see in the film, who mention how normally it was the 70s, right? So there might have been a few hippies hanging around, the Dharma people. But with Kangyur Rinpoche's students, many of them are French and very intellectuals, very clear, crystal sort of clear, intellectual people on an intellectual pursuit. So he had it seemed to be he had attracted these people who would carry and translate, the message of the 84,000 teachings, which are incidentally about, it's going really well. The translation of the 84,000 teachings are going really well.
Is that I haven't looked into this much, but the Zongsa Khyentse Foundation and the 84,000 project, the 84,000 texts that Kangyur Rinpoche brought from Tibet play a big part in that translation of the Kangyur and the Tengyur translation project. Am I right in saying that?
He brought out I think copies of the Kangyur exist in many different countries, and the wonderful thing about the 84,000 project is that they're taking a sutra and they're comparing the versions between Tibet and China and other places. So I know that Kangyur Rinpoche's sons and his family, and especially his student John Kanti, who's like leading the 84,000 project in Padmakara. So Kangyur Rinpoche, the effect of Kangyur Rinpoche's students, family, actions are playing a big role in that. But definitely, that's a project led by Zongsa Khyentse Rinpoche, and also Kangyur Rinpoche, went to the trouble to bring out the 2 tons of the teachings, because at that point in history there was a risk it would be destroyed. But luckily that wasn't the only copy. But the Dalai Lama requested him to bring that out because at that point it could have all been extinguished. But fortunately it wasn't. But he did bring out many other texts that did end up being the only copy. So he has rescued some texts from extinction, but mainly he brought out the Kangyur because it could have been extinct at that time, but luckily it wasn't. So we hope we're clear in that in the film. We're not claiming that he saved the whole kangaroo, but he did rescue the Tibetan version, the Tibetan version of the kangaroo at a time it was in great danger.
Yeah, so that is a very critical period in history where it could have been lost. But Yeshe, might you want to say something about, we've spoken a bit about how you went to the film, you applied for funding for the film, both Kim and yourself, and there was maybe at least inferred was there might be not that much interest in people who might not know about Kangyur Rinpoche. Might you want to say something about how you, as a director, how you worked to introduce an audience who might not know about Kangyur Rinpoche? How did you jump that hurdle?
Yeah, so it was Zongsa Khyentse Rinpoche's foresight, because I think every time he saw you, Dad, he'd say, make it about the students, make it about the students. So he really, and even, I think we've gone too devotional with it, I think he really wanted it to be like, bring it into this modern world, and about our trials and tribulations of trying to tame our mind. And we hope that that's why we sort of have been guided by the teachers to keep the two sides of the story, to keep Kangyur Rinpoche's traditional life story, and to keep the story of the students focusing most on Kim's story of what it's like to try and be a lifelong practitioner and the difficulties involved. So I think many people, the feedback we're getting are that many people will see, what your story, Dad, and they relate to it in their life, whether they're Buddhist or not, they relate to it. Struggles trying to apply their own wisdom in their life to become more wise, to navigate life better. There's that. And then with telling Kangyur Rinpoche's story, we really specifically, Dad was really amazing in sourcing these, the editor knew nothing about Buddhism. So as we were editing it, she'd be, I'd say, hey, put this in. And she'd be like, what on earth is that? And we're like, okay, take it out, So we really took their guide, our team's guidance, who weren't Buddhist, on how we can make a film that will make sense to them, just how will compassion make sense to them? How will wisdom make sense to them? And with Kangyur Rinpoche specifically, like when people met him, he couldn't speak English, they couldn't speak Tibetan. So it was just his presence that was so powerful and had an effect. And so I tried to do that with the movie, just chronologically, just introducing him through when the students walked into the room and he was there. That's the first time we really meet him in the film, is just they walk into the room, he's there, and we get a taste of what it was like to sit in the room with Kangyur Rinpoche. And it's just after we established that he's kind of got something really amazing about him, then we gradually unfold, well, this is why he's amazing, because when he was 11 years old, he did a retreat, when he did this, so we tell his life story unfolds from just introducing his presence first.
I think that's, it's really well done. And you really get, I think you've said previously that you get the feeling like you've had a cup of tea with Kangyur Rinpoche through just that first impression from his students when they first met him. And as people will see, and I don't want to give too much away, but yeah, people couldn't really speak Tibetan with Kangyur Rinpoche. So it was a very sort of almost seems like it was almost like a palpable, tangible connection. So I thought that was really well done. Yeah, I think that's another point to add. I think people who go and see it who are not Buddhist, I think they will get something out of both Kangyur Rinpoche's story and also Kim's story. And Kim, I wanted to ask you about your break, I suppose, from the Buddhist
my time in the salad bar. Yeah,
that's right.
Yes.
that's what songs like
Yes.
jokes about with you.
Yeah, he does. Yeah.
Maybe if you want to say something about what that means. And
I might just comment on what Yeshe was talking about, because we had a lot of help from Zongzi Khyentse during the making of this film. A lot of help. He just seemed to suddenly turn up, and so we really did have a lot of help. And I remember asking him, could he just send something, just give me an idea of what kind of movie he wanted. And we got this DVD in the mail, and it was this Chinese cast of thousands war film, sort of ancient samurais and kung fu movie, just way off the clock. And this was in response to what should it look like? What should if you just give us an idea of what the movie should be like, we could just hear him laughing. He was certainly not one to take it the whole thing seriously. But when I arrived at Kangyur Rinpoche, in front of Kangyur Rinpoche, I wasn't, although I wore long hair, and I was determined not to be a hippie. And so to turn up at Kangyur Rinpoche's house, and how we sort of randomly, I got to meet my brother up there. He had told me that there were Buddhists there. As you see in the movie, I'd actually found a book in the sand on a beach in Australia, and on Buddhism, in 1969, and I went, that's where I'm going. I'm going to see this, find this. And my brother, went ahead of me and sent me a letter saying there are Buddhists in Darjeeling, come. And so off we went. It took a while, but we got there. And the day we were supposed to go and meet his teacher, Kangyur Rinpoche had gone. He'd gone down to Sonada and he wasn't in Darjeeling. And Dolma, the woman who owned the guest house that we were staying at, said, "Oh, this Kangyur Rinpoche, and he's just down there on Gandhi Road. Why don't you go and see him? I'm sure he's there." And with that, we set off on our journey, and somewhat comically actually, because we went to knock on the door, thinking we were at the neighbour's house. Tenzing Norgay, who was a well-known, every Kiwi knows who Tenzing Norgay is. He was a guy who climbed Everest with Sir Edmund Hillary. We thought we were at his house. So we knocked on the door, and this woman answered it and said, "Oh, come in, he's expecting you. Come in, he's expecting you." The only English it was Amala. So we said, "No, we're in the wrong place. We're actually looking for Kangyur Rinpoche. Come in, he's expecting you." And and we went and thinking we're still in the wrong place, and then there's Kangyur Rinpoche sitting there. Or we sat down, had a cup of tea, and Kangyur Rinpoche came in, sat in his chair, and I thought I wasn't the sort of person to be kind of slack-jawed, but I was just knocked out by his very presence. My jaw just dropped. It just emanated this kind of, and yet was he as I was referring to before, he had broken fingernails, and he looked like a working man, and yet he had this woof pulsating energy that was Marianne, Yeshe's mother, and I were just completely, and he gave us, we took refuge right there and then, and that was it. We were under instructions and started then, right there and then.
Wow, so straight away you took refuge.
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks for telling us a bit about Kangyur Rinpoche and your how you and your wife came to meet him, which is amazing. The fact that he's expecting you, and I've heard similar stories with students of Chogyam Trungpa and things like that, which is incredible.
Those times were back in those days, Westerners, it was their first kind of meeting with the Dharma, and I think they pulled a few tricks, particularly these tantric types, to pull Westerners in, so that it's almost like doing a trick. Now you see it, now you don't, and we just woof, what was that, and be shocked and amazed by the trick with the right hand, not knowing that the left hand actually held the jewel. So because it really was the very early days of Westerners actually meeting the Dharma, the 1970, I think it was. Yeah,
absolutely. If you can say something about why you did take a break, why you mentioned that you had a seizure. It was, as I understand it, it was during a retreat around Kangyur Rinpoche's house, or around that area in Darjeeling. I've I know a little bit about epilepsy because I've lived with someone with epilepsy, but it must have been a very rattling experience.
it was, particularly as I had a history previously, 4 years during the time that I came back to New Zealand in 1970, late 1970s from India. I'd had a brain hemorrhage. I was skiing down a mountain and had this brain hemorrhage, and was pretty serious. But I was, they got there in time, and I had surgery, but they did say, you must never, from now on, that's it. You need to really take care. They pretty much had me in sort of in a dressing gown and slippers. And here I'm at 25 years old or something, and I wasn't prepared to do this, take any of this. And they said, you've got to take these pills, at that time, the only drug treatment was serious, serious drugs. And so I was, I just wanted to get out and go surfing. So within 6 weeks, I was in the surf, with a helmet on, with the holes drilled in the side. And because I've always been a surfer, and I was back in the ocean. And I was, I thought that's for other people, not for me. And I didn't take any of the medication that I was supposed to take because they said, you've now got a big scar on your brain, you will have epileptic seizures. And I didn't for several years until I got back up there and was doing a retreat, finishing off a piece of the Nundro, and it was a 6-week retreat. And about halfway through, I just got whacked by this massive epileptic fit. And it really rocked my faith. I mean, it just really rocked me, but it was, here I thought I was under the protection of Kangyur Rinpoche's, and yet, here I'd suffered the terrifying ordeal. And when I asked the Rinpoche what I should do, they said, you need to go back to New Zealand, and you really need to start taking those pills. And so I did go back. I came back to New Zealand, and I started taking a sort of lesser but pretty strong pills that I got, that's sort of the least I could get away with. But always feeling, how come? I thought I was protected. I thought I was in some kind of protection zone, when you go to a retreat. And that was a real, now here I am, looking back on it. It was such a lesson, in the, I had this, I raised the Catholics, I had this kind of Christian underlying belief that a God will save me, I'm under the protection of our Lord, and bang, I was not under any protection at all. It was, and yet, were it not for that experience, I wouldn't have come back to the Dharma. I wouldn't have been through all that I went through. I wouldn't have gone back to the salad bar and got did some more research on, what does samsara look like? What does it look like underneath, on top, sideways? I've studied samsara very hard, yeah.
I think that's very. I think that's one of the strengths of the film. The many strengths of the film is that is a very relatable thing for anybody who's on a path.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a hard slog. Dharma's hard, but any kind of path is hard, and there's going to be times when you take time off or get sidetracked, or need to do other things. So I think just the physical journey back to India was also, your inner journey back to
yes, that's right. Yeah,
well. It's a very universal thing, for me at least. I realize we're about to run out of time, so I'll stop the filming, and maybe I'll send another link and we can continue the conversation. Is that okay?
Sure, yeah.
I thought part of the strength of the film was that its universal appeal, in that it's the return to Gandhi Road is also an inner return, as well as a physical returning to the location where you spent time in that Kangyur Rinpoche.
And I did think, while we were just off air for a minute, I was under the protection of Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche. Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche had taken on, Kangyur Rinpoche had ensured that Dilgo Khyentse Rinpoche would look after us students after he passed away. And so he did. And I was under his kind of auspices. But, now that here I am, having spent a lot of time in this, that led to that episode, let me leave and I return. And now I think about it, I think that it's that very, there's a kind of, unless you're very, your character is one of stillness and of peace. It's hard for us as Westerners to take into account that we also have all these other crazy sides to us, and they're equally, they're equally relevant in the path of the Dharma. They are equally relevant. They are, you've heard all these crazy yogis. That was what it was like, and particularly in the 70s, these crazy kind of Westerners with long hair and stuff. They were crazy, but they were also experiencing, the Dharma, and some of them, have gone a long way up the path. And I think it's equally valid to kind of have these kind of crazy, decades of doubt almost, because now that I can look back at those, I can see that suffering that I went through, that difficulty in handling samsara, as being, kind of, it's all part of the training. It's all part of the wheel. It's all part of, the addictions and the, as I think I mentioned in the film, the addictions and just even stuff like leaky buildings. It's all part of, it's not separate from our path, our Dharma path. It's all part of it. Absolutely. And that to me, that was a real kind of aha moment, and that was experienced as a result of the film, of making this film. So thank you, Yeshe.
It wasn't me. I just signed
Yeah.
up to do this.
Yeshe, I wanted to ask you about Matthew Ricard and his role as all the wonderful photography that we see, and some of the moving images, I understand, come from the footage that he and the photography that he took in the early days, so to speak. What you want to mention how that influenced the making of the film?
Well, we were so fortunate because he was he's a professional photographer, so he took these exquisitely powerful photos of Kangyur Rinpoche that I mean, before making this film, just through my life, I saw the effect of these photos on people. You'd see one of these images of Kangyur Rinpoche and see people looking at it and just be blown away by it. So the photos were so powerful, and through the making of it, we sort of stumbled across, I think there's 3 videos of Kangyur Rinpoche that we found, and a recording of his voice, but each one just, I mean, it just, yeah, just so powerful. But that was enough, and so that was, again, having so little sort of also made us work harder in trying to bring him to life, you know, rather than document him. You know, we just tried to bring him to life. You know, what did the room feel like when you were sitting with him? You know, what was it? What was his character like? You know, like what impression did he leave on the people that met him? So it's sort of having the hurdle of just the photos and a few videos meant we worked harder at other ways of trying to bring him to life. But yeah, it's thanks to Matthew. It's not only Matthew. It was in the film you'll see someone called Anne Benson who features in there a lot. So it's almost like the whole Benson family kind of met Kangyur Rinpoche, and it was the father who gave half of his land in the Dordogne to Kangyur Rinpoche's family. He just offered it, and thanks to that, the Dharma is flourishing there. That's where Kangyur Rinpoche's family, a lot of them live there now. But he took a lot of video footage. So we have amazing video footage from him, and then a few bits of video footage that we just don't know where it came from, but it's found us. So that's good.
That's amazing, and it is a stitching of older footage and you know, interviews with people like Machu Ricard, Zongza Khyentse, John Canty, I think is the
Machu Ricard. And when we arrived, Yeshe's mother and I arrived, there was Machu and Anne. They were the 2 who we were closest to because they sort of lived. They would seem to be there all the time. The other Westerners, not so much. Jill Heald was the other one that that we had, and I think didn't she provide one of the videos to Yeshe?
Yeah, but I don't film it. So it's all kind of quite mysterious how these videos sort of emerged, but here and there.
Yeah.
And to I think we're towards the end of our time together, but what was it like working together, guys? Maybe I'll ask Yeshe first, and then Kim.
Okay. So I think, especially as you say, like many other kind of Buddhists will be watching this, and maybe some other Tibetan Buddhists, where I guess when you try and do something for the Dharma, it sort of has a explosion effect on your mind and your life a little bit. So sort of, I guess, because we were father and daughter, because that link was so strong, we got through it while the film could fully explode a lot of the parts of our mind which needed to be disintegrated. So it definitely had a dynamite effect in a lot of ways. But because we're father and daughter, that meant that we could go through it together and come out the other side. So the link, so that meant we could go through the degree of difficult experiences that we went through and come out the other side. But I mean, you hear about other people, doing Dharma stuff, especially stuff that Zongza Khyentse Rinpoche has instigated, and in terms of difficulty, ours is like 2 out of 10. So we're not claiming any difficulty here, but just to say that I think because we're father and daughter, our connection's so strong, we could go through what needed to be go through to get to the other side. Whereas if we weren't there, it would have been harder. Maybe one person would have walked out, the other would have worked out. But we got through it. Yeah.
Kim?
Yes. Well, I would just say that it was all part of the trip. There were some really tense moments there. That's for sure. And it's not like we agreed. There were some very serious disagreements. However, as father and daughter, there's never an option of like us never seeing each other again. We are just, we're joined at the hip. We literally are joined at the hip. And I love her very much as my daughter. So there's no way I could ever, even consider not, making the movie how she wanted to make it. I just, would sometimes, I stand for a particular thing in the movie, and until it wasn't, till basically it was wrung dry. But having said all that, now I would, it was a very special thing to do, and what father wouldn't want to spend 7 years or so on a project with his daughter. It was a real wonder. It was great to just spend all that time with your daughter. As adults, we don't tend to spend that much time with your daughter, the sort of time we did. So it was great. It was really wonderful.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
Any projects or upcoming films for you, Kim?
Yes, there is. I'm working on one at the moment. It's currently called Karma and Castanets, and it's the story of flamenco. I've always had a passion for flamenco. My mum had a passion for flamenco. My brother been playing for 40 years. The flamenco is, and I toured Paco Peña a few times. Flamenco is that's that we're working on that at the moment. A bit of New Zealand Film Commission funding, believe it or not.
Oh,
yeah,
funding.
Yeah, for however long that lasts. Yeah.
And is it the full story? Are we talking like origins of flamenco?
Yes, we're talking origins of flamenco. We have there's a Paul Basauda is originally a Kiwi guy, but he's been studying almost for 15 years now in Spain, and he performs, and he's going to take us with him as we do the journey way back to South India, where it all started a long time ago, and travel with it along the Silk Road, all the way to, of course, Spain and what it is now.
Oh, amazing! So
yeah,
just as you're saying that, I can't wait.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, me too.
I play guitar, so
wow,
just to have that historical knowledge will be inspiring, and I'm sure I'll be obsessed with guitar again.
Yeah, I hope so. Yeah. Yeah, it was a great help having made this movie with Yeshe, and having learnt quite a lot as you do on the way, but still always learning. Always learning. But yeah, it's really exciting. I'm really excited by it.
Okay, we'll keep posted for that. And Yeshe, do you have any projects coming up with film or anything else you want to tell us about?
I think with this film is still we're right at the beginning of trying to share it around the world, because so many of Kangyur Rinpoche's students are in France and Portugal, and because of COVID we haven't been able to even kind of knock on the door up there yet. So we're I'm really all my kind of focus is still on there's so many thousands of people that need to see this movie. How can we do it? So at the moment we're putting a lot of our energy behind that, yeah, but definitely, there'll always be more to do. Always more to do. So.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time today, Kim and Yeshe Hegan. And I hope one day we can meet in person, that it's not through screens. Hopefully, I can visit New Zealand at some point and visit Charlie Rinpoche's center over there, and maybe we can meet up over there sometime. Just to let the people watching anywhere in the world, anywhere in Melbourne really, that the screening for Return to Gandhi Road is on Tuesday, the 23rd of February at 6:45 p.m. sharp. And to get your tickets early, because they are selling out fast. And we will put the link to purchase tickets through Tribe Booking. I think it's through Tribe Booking in the description below. I'm really looking forward to seeing it, and I hope you enjoy your Losar celebrations tonight if you're having any. And once again, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thanks, Matthew.
sleepless nights get later. I wanna know what fears apply to me, but I'm sure you make me leave my island, make me free my home from riots and rags. Picked all the shit up and let it go. Besides, I burned a branch, a limb too long. Spent last season pining, call a week ago. Pride replacement wearing gold, silvers and indigos alike. My murmur chimes again. Saved from preachers' writing, you make me read the road first sight of day. Like pain inlaid, this can't be real. Which signs to ignore? Which lights in a row? What settles it? Summer. You're caught in the middle, you can build a way out. You build a way out, you see your way through it. Sleep at night gets later. What fears apply to me, what I'm sure of. When that storm rolls into harbor, heart beats harder than the walls would shake. We fall together, heels push the world aside. I stall and